Imagine a mysterious young woman chosen to lie beside Israel's most powerful king, David, in his final days. Abishag, the virgin from Shunem, was not brought to him by mere chance. The true purpose of her presence may be deeper than you think. But why was a young, beautiful woman placed by the side of an old and frail king? Was it just an act of compassion? Or was there a hidden, even political motivation behind this decision? I'm about to reveal intriguing details about how this choice impacted Israel's destiny and even sparked a dangerous struggle for the throne. Stay with me to discover how Abishag's quiet presence may have forever changed biblical history and how understanding this story might even impact your own life. In King David's final days, when age weighed heavily and he grew colder each day, the palace servants faced an unusual decision. They needed to find someone to warm the king, to bring him comfort and vitality. But the choice didn't fall on just anyone. It was Abishag, a young woman from Shunem known throughout Israel for her beauty, who was called for this role. Why her? What did she have that others did not? There was something in her that stirred reverence and mystery, something the court seemed to sense but preferred not to put into words. Abishag from Shunem was brought to the palace, and her presence beside the king quickly left a profound impression. Young and serene, her arrival brought a new tone to David's chambers. As his caretaker, her role was to lie beside the king, offering warmth amidst his frailty. Though the task appeared simple, to Abishag it was also a call to honor. After all, this was no ordinary man, but the great king of Israel, a leader who had fought battles, defeated giants, and ruled with justice. Being by David's side in his final days was a privilege that carried both responsibility and respect. Choosing Abishag among all the young women in Israel was a decision inspired by the people's hearts. She, seen as the most beautiful, represented the vitality that was slipping away from the king, and her presence, the counselors hoped, could bring David one last breath of peace and vigor. In 1 Kings 1:1-4, Scripture tells us David could no longer keep warm, no matter how many blankets he used. Human warmth was a common remedy in those times, but in this case, the decision went beyond physical need. Abishag's presence symbolized a comfort that resonated with the heart of the people. The young woman from Shunem, a humble village far from the palace spotlight, saw her life change in unimaginable ways as she was chosen to stand by the king. Suddenly, she found herself in the royal chambers, taking on a position of care and honor. Although she had no intention of assuming a political or prominent role, her presence was appreciated by all. Abishag's beauty and simplicity made her a symbol of grace and humility before a king whose history of bravery and faith still echoed through Israel. With Abishag's arrival, something new settled in David's chambers. The young, serene presence of the virgin from Shunem brought a silent solace to the king, whose health was steadily declining. By resting beside him, Abishag represented the tranquility of a new generation, sharing the same space as one of Israel's most revered leaders. Although they were close, there was no room for physical intimacy. As 1 Kings 1:4 clearly states, the bond between them was defined by peace and respect. For King David, this discreet proximity provided a comfort deeper than words. After years of leadership, battles, and hard decisions, David found in Abishag a quiet companion who seemed to have the gift of lightening the weight of his years. Abishag's beauty and serenity, the way her presence radiated calm, made her a refuge for the king. In the quiet of the night, the young virgin from Shunem was there, her presence, though silent, seemingly capable of soothing the heart of a man who had devoted his life to his people and God. The novelty of Abishag at the king's side sparked quiet murmurs among the members of the court. It was only natural for such a young woman so close to the king to stir curiosity and even speculation among those who observed from the outside. To many, the physical closeness suggested an unusual familiarity, but despite the assumptions, Abishag remained true to her purpose, and David, even in his frailty, seemed inspired by this nearly angelic presence. Their intentions, however, were pure, and this was apparent to anyone who truly knew them. David, who had faced so many struggles throughout his life, appeared to find in Abishag's company a reflection of peace he had not known for many years. The king, who had carried Israel's burdens, could now enjoy the calm that only a sincere presence could offer. For him, Abishag represented a kind of innocence and serenity that became invaluable in his old age. Beside her, he was reminded of life's simplicity, of times when the weight of the throne did not consume his thoughts, and of days when peace came naturally, as in the days of his youth. And so Abishag became a constant in David's life, someone who occupied a special place by his side when he sought rest. The young woman from Shunem was there, offering David the peace of her company, even in silence. Thus, the king found new meaning in her presence, without needing words, only the comfort of knowing someone was there. For those who observed, this bond was a profound mystery, reflecting something pure and intangible, a link that kept the king in peace during his final days. With David's death, succession matters in the kingdom intensified, and soon disputes arose over the throne. Adonijah, David's son and Solomon's half-brother, was one of the first to show ambition to rule Israel, even before the king's passing. Now, without David, Adonijah sought a daring strategy to ask for Abishag's hand in marriage. While this request might initially seem personal, it held significant implications. In the mindset of the time, marrying someone close to the former king also symbolized a claim to power and influence over the throne of Israel. Adonijah, however, chose not to approach Solomon directly with his proposal. Instead, he asked Bathsheba, Solomon's mother, to intercede for him. This decision seemed cautious and strategic, perhaps in the hope that Bathsheba, by asking on her son's behalf, might sway Solomon in Adonijah's favor. With David's recent death, Adonijah's request was risky. After all, Abishag was remembered as the woman who had been beside the king in his final days, and this gave her a symbolic significance beyond any ordinary marital union. Receiving the request through his mother, Solomon quickly discerned Adonijah's true intention. To him, the proposal was not merely a marriage request, but a veiled attempt to seize power. Solomon saw it as a direct threat to his rule, for by uniting with Abishag, Adonijah might legitimize his claim to the throne, garnering support from those who still saw him as a possible successor to David. To Solomon, this was more than a family matter. It was a dangerous move that, if allowed, could spark instability and conflict within Israel. Solomon's response was swift and decisive. Seeing the request as insubordination, he ordered Adonijah's execution to remove any potential threat to his reign. This act, though severe, made it clear that Solomon was not willing to risk his inherited throne. For him, allowing Adonijah to marry Abishag could pave the way for challenges to his authority. Solomon's decision not only safeguarded his position, but also sent a powerful message to anyone who might question the legitimacy of his reign. With this firm response, Solomon further consolidated his rule, and Adonijah's request became a lesson for those who dared challenge the new king. Abishag, whose presence beside David had symbolized respect and dignity, now bore an even greater weight. Abishag's story alongside King David has always sparked deep debate among scholars and theologians about the true role she played in his final days. Some view Abishag as a close nurse and caretaker, without any marital or intimate bond with the king. But given the common practice among monarchies at the time, where women close to the king also assumed the title of concubines, others question if she might have been regarded by the court as a potential concubine. This doubt arises from both the era's context and the symbolism associated with Abishag's closeness to the king. Part of the debate intensifies from the fact that Abishag was a young woman of great beauty, entrusted with being near the monarch in his most delicate moments. Some scholars argue that, since she never had relations with David, the title of concubine would not apply. According to the biblical account, the lack of intimacy reinforces her role as a pure caretaker, not a consort. For these scholars, Abishag was a respectful and dignified presence, a young woman whose only purpose was to offer comfort in honor of the king of Israel. On the other hand, those who suggest that Abishag might have been considered a concubine point out that her constant presence by David's side afforded her a symbolic and political status. In the views of many at the time, being close to the king could mean elevated status, where she came to be seen as part of David's royal household. This line of thought draws support from the era's traditions, where any woman by the king's side could be seen as a person of importance and prestige. For these scholars, even though Abishag did not have intimacy with David, society could have interpreted her position differently. To understand more, it is necessary to remember that female figures in the monarchy of Israel held complex roles. At times, the role of caretaker was distinct from that of a concubine, but the line between the two could blur, especially in the eyes of the court. Women close to kings were often seen as part of an inner circle, which afforded them a unique political status. In this way, Abishag's figure gained a symbolism that went beyond her practical role, carrying nuances of prestige nurtured by the era's own culture. Even today, the question remains, was Abishag merely a presence of peace and service in David's final days, or did her closeness to the monarch elevate her to a more symbolic title? This question continues to spark debates and varied interpretations. For some, she was a quiet caretaker. For others, a figure of significance that transcended the simplicity of her function. But whether as a caretaker or a concubine, Abishag holds a unique place in Israel's history, remembered for both her beauty and the peace she brought beside a king in his final moments. Abishag's story closes with yet another intriguing question, the theory that she might be the same figure described as the Shulamite in the poetic Song of Songs. This biblical book is known for its passionate and symbolic language, where a female figure, called the Shulamite, is depicted as a symbol of beauty and love. The association between Abishag and the Shulamite arises primarily because both are described as remarkable women of grace from similar origins. Shunem, Abishag's hometown, might well be the same region as that of the Shulamite. But this possibility raises even more questions. To some scholars, this connection between Abishag and the Shulamite is compelling. The description of the Shulamite in the Song of Songs reflects a young woman of striking presence, much like Abishag, who was chosen for her beauty and youth. Additionally, the way the song exalts the Shulamite's beauty and her mystical, almost ethereal aura resembles the traits attributed to Abishag during her brief but meaningful time at David's court. This reasoning suggests that the Song of Songs could be a possible celebration, albeit symbolic, of the youth and beauty Abishag represented. However, there are also arguments against this hypothesis. Abishag is mentioned explicitly and factually in historical accounts, while the Shulamite is a more poetic figure surrounded by symbolism. The context of the Song of Songs diverges from the role Abishag had in the Israelite court, being more of a poem of love and desire, possibly representing an ideal relationship transcending personal identity. For these scholars, the Shulamite is more a personification of love and beauty, in a broader, timeless context, without direct ties to specific historical figures. Another point to consider is the temporal and cultural distance between Abishag's account and the composition of the Song of Songs. Many see the Shulamite as an archetype of the ideal woman, a poetic representation capturing love, beauty, and purity, traits that, though similar to Abishag, could belong to a different time or perspective. In this sense, the Shulamite would be more of a symbol than a specific person, a figure created to convey the idea of a woman full of grace and love, while Abishag lived in a more concrete context beside David. Despite these differences, the possible connection between Abishag and the Shulamite continues to fascinate readers and scholars, offering a reflection point on the symbolic nature of female figures in the Bible. Both figures, in their own ways, represent beauty, youth, and purity, though in different contexts. The question remains open, but contemplating this possible link enriches our view of Abishag, a young woman whose brief time by David's side inspired interpretations that crossed centuries and left room for imagination and mystery. Now that you know Abishag's complex and mysterious story, take a moment to think. How many times in life might someone around you be playing a profound role, even in silence? Her journey, a young woman who, without ambitions, found herself at the center of decisions that changed Israel's history, teaches us that our actions, no matter how discreet, can hold a power beyond what we might imagine. And I'd like to know, which part of this story impacted you the most? Do you see Abishag as someone who brought peace to the king, or do you believe her presence by David's side influenced politics and power in Israel in a way you might never have expected? Let us know in the comments what your thoughts are. What moment in this story intrigued you or sparked a new reflection? If this narrative about Abishag brought you new insights, and if you want to keep exploring other biblical stories with life lessons for today, leave a like to support the channel, and of course subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next content. Let's dive together into the mysteries and timeless lessons the scriptures have to offer.